Widow kicked out with newborn baby, but a letter from her husband changed her life. Jennifer Miller clutched her 5-day-old baby to her chest as tears mingled with the light drizzle of New York City. Her mother-in-law, Barbara, had just pushed her out the door with a torn suitcase, shouting that she wanted neither her nor that child in her home anymore. The older woman had waited exactly through the mandatory mourning period after Michael's sudden passing to kick out the daughter-in-law she had never approved of. Jennifer rocked little Ethan, who cried from hunger, but her milk had dried up from the stress of loss and now the eviction. Sitting on the cold steps of the building in Queens, she stared at the crumpled paper in her free hand. It was a past-due electricity bill Barbara had thrown in her face, saying now she knew what responsibility felt like. The icy July wind cut through her thin blouse. Jennifer didn't know where to go. Her parents had passed when she was young, and Michael had been all she had in the world. They'd met 3 years earlier at a bakery downtown where she worked as a cashier, and he delivered sweets for his small business. Their romance blossomed quickly, and within a year they married in a simple courthouse ceremony, with only his reluctant mother as a witness. Mrs. Wilson, a 68-year-old neighbor who always watched the building's comings and goings from her ground-floor apartment window, came down when she saw the scene. Her gray hair was tied in a simple bun, and she wore a floral apron over her navy blue dress. "My dear, what happened here?" she asked softly, reaching out to help Jennifer up. "Mrs. Barbara threw me out," Jennifer managed between sobs. "She said she never wants to see me or Ethan again, that we're not her family." Mrs. Wilson shook her head in dismay. She'd witnessed the constant arguments between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law over the past few months, especially after Michael started showing those strange symptoms. The older woman had always suspected Barbara held deep resentment. "Come with me, sweetheart. You and the baby can't stay out here in the cold." Mrs. Wilson's apartment was small but cozy, with well-kept antique furniture and black and white photographs lining the walls. The scent of fresh coffee and cornbread hung in the air. She prepared a bottle for Ethan with powdered milk she kept for when her grandchildren visited. "Michael was a good boy," Mrs. Wilson said as she warmed the milk. "Always greeted me when he came home from work. But his mother was always a bitter woman. When Michael's father left her over 20 years ago, she swore she'd never trust anyone again." Jennifer held Ethan, who had finally stopped crying after finishing the bottle. The baby had his father's same brown eyes and a stubborn tuft of dark hair that refused to lie flat. "I need to get my things," Jennifer murmured, "and Ethan's documents. Everything's still up there." When they went back up to Barbara's apartment together, they found the woman had changed the lock. From inside, they could hear the sound of objects being moved. Jennifer pounded on the door in desperation. "Please, Mrs. Barbara, I just need Ethan's documents and some clothes." "I already threw it all out," came the harsh reply from inside. "You mean nothing to me now?" Mrs. Wilson held Jennifer's arm as she threatened to kick the door. "Easy now, dear. We'll figure this out." Back in the ground-floor apartment, Jennifer discovered things were even worse than she'd thought. The joint bank account she'd shared with Michael had been emptied. Barbara, as the sole legal heir in the absence of a will, had managed to access the money by claiming rights to her son's assets. "How can she do this?" Jennifer asked through tears. "Michael always said we had a joint account, that I could use the money." "Unfortunately, my dear, without a will or without you being listed as the official heir, the law favors his mother," explained Mrs. Wilson, who had faced similar issues when her own husband passed years ago. Jennifer spent her first sleepless night, rocking Ethan while trying to think of a solution. Michael had left so suddenly there was no time for planning. He had started feeling unwell on a Monday, was hospitalized by Tuesday, and by Thursday he was gone. The doctors said it was a heart issue, something no one could have predicted in a man of just 28. The next morning, Jennifer left early with Ethan to try sorting out the paperwork. The neighborhood health clinic was packed, and she had to wait 2 hours in line just to get a copy of the baby's birth certificate. The clerk, a middle-aged woman named Denise, was kind when she noticed Jennifer's emotional state. "You look exhausted, sweetheart. Everything all right?" Jennifer briefly explained her situation, and Denise shook her head sympathetically. "Listen, I don't know if this helps, but I remember your husband. Michael Miller, right? He came here a few times last month. Said he was organizing some important papers. Jennifer's heart raced. Michael had never mentioned visiting the clinic beyond routine checkups. Do you remember what he wanted? I can't share details due to privacy, but I know he spoke at length with the social worker. Mrs. Thompson might explain better. Mrs. Thompson was in a meeting and wouldn't be available until late afternoon. Meanwhile, Jennifer needed to find a way to survive. With just $20 in her pocket and the baby needing diapers and formula, she made a painful decision. She removed her wedding ring and walked to a jewelry store downtown. How much can you give me for this ring? The jeweler, a man with a graying mustache, examined it under a magnifying glass. It's real gold, but not very pure. I can give you $80. Jennifer's chest tightened. It wasn't much, but it would have to last a few days. She kept only the simple ring Michael had given her on their first date, worthless in value, but full of memories. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now back to the story. By late afternoon at the clinic, Jennifer finally met with Mrs. Thompson, a social worker in her 50s, with brown hair tied in a ponytail and reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose. Your husband came here several times in recent weeks, Mrs. Thompson confirmed, checking her notes. He seemed worried about something but didn't go into detail. He asked about spousal rights in case something happened to him. Did he know he was going to pass? I can't say for sure, but he showed unusual urgency. He requested lots of information about documents, inheritance, and family protection. He left some papers with me, but I can only release them with a power of attorney or your marriage certificate. Jennifer felt tears burning her eyes again. The marriage certificate was among the documents Barbara had hidden or destroyed. Is there any way to get a copy? Yes, but it takes weeks, and you'd have to pay the courthouse fees. With $80, Jennifer couldn't afford those fees. She returned to Mrs. Wilson's apartment feeling disheartened. The neighbor had prepared a simple soup with vegetables and bones for extra flavor, and they ate in silence while Ethan slept in an improvised basket. My dear, Mrs. Wilson finally said, tomorrow you'll come with me to social services. There are programs that can help mothers in difficult situations. At the neighborhood social services office, Jennifer discovered her situation was more complicated than she'd imagined. The caseworker, a young woman with curly hair named Tiffany, explained that Barbara had filed a petition claiming Jennifer was unfit to care for her grandson. How am I unfit? Jennifer asked, a mix of anger and desperation rising in her chest. She claims you have no steady income, no home of your own, and no family support. She said the baby would be better off with his paternal grandmother. Jennifer held Ethan tighter. The thought of losing her son was unbearable. Tiffany continued explaining the legal process, but the words sounded distant, as if coming from another world. All Jennifer could think about was how Barbara was using her vulnerability against her. What can I do to prove I'm a good mother? You'll need to find a job, secure housing, and show you can provide for the child. But I know it's hard with a newborn. In the days that followed, Jennifer knocked on countless doors looking for work. She carried Ethan in a makeshift sling, but most employers politely declined when they saw the baby. Who would hire a mother with a newborn who'd need frequent time off? At a house in the upscale Upper East Side, where she'd gone for an interview as a housekeeper, she met Mrs. Johnson, a 63-year-old widow living alone. The woman was moved seeing Jennifer with the baby in her arms during their conversation. Sweetheart, I can't hire you as a housekeeper. My apartment is small, and I clean it myself. But I can pay you to run errands and do some light tasks a few times a week. It wasn't much, but Jennifer accepted gratefully. Mrs. Johnson had neatly cut white hair, wore simple yet elegant clothes, and had lost her husband 2 years prior. She understood the pain of widowhood and the loneliness that came with it. My daughter lives in England with my grandchildren, Mrs. Johnson shared as she fixed Jennifer a snack. Sometimes I feel so alone in this apartment. A genuine friendship began to form between the two women. Mrs. Johnson enjoyed talking about life, her 40 years of marriage, the challenges of raising children, and Jennifer found comfort in these conversations, a relief from her own anguish. During one of these talks, Mrs. Johnson mentioned casually, "You know, dear, you should see a lawyer." This business with your mother-in-law taking everything doesn't sit right with me. I can't afford a lawyer, Mrs. Johnson. There are law offices that do free work for those who can't pay. It's called legal aid. Jennifer noted the information, but between caring for Ethan, doing odd jobs for Mrs. Johnson, and trying to find other sources of income, there was little time for anything else. Her living situation was also becoming unsustainable. Mrs. Wilson was kind, but her apartment was small, and Jennifer could tell she was becoming a burden. The older woman never complained, but Jennifer saw the exhaustion in her eyes. Sleeping on the living room couch with a baby who woke multiple times at night wasn't easy for anyone. One morning, Jennifer woke to find Mrs. Wilson feeling unwell. The woman had a high fever and had to be taken to the hospital. The doctors said it was pneumonia and that she'd need to stay for a few days. "What am I going to do now?" Jennifer murmured to herself, holding Ethan as she watched Mrs. Wilson being settled onto the hospital gurney. Sarah, an old co-worker of Michael's from the candy company where he used to work, showed up at the hospital by coincidence. She was visiting a hospitalized relative when she recognized Jennifer in the hallway. "Jennifer, oh my, how are you? I heard about Michael. I'm so sorry." Sarah was a 35-year-old woman with dark hair, curly locks, and a warm smile. She and Michael had worked together for 2 years, and she always considered him a dear friend. When Jennifer explained her situation, Sarah didn't hesitate. "You're coming to my place. I have a pull-out couch in the living room, and my daughter's all grown up. You can stay as long as you need." Sarah's home was in Jersey City, a long trip by public transport, but it was clean and welcoming. Her 15-year-old daughter, Madison, was delighted with Ethan and offered to help take care of him whenever Jennifer needed to step out. "Michael talked about you a lot," Sarah said one evening as they sipped tea in the kitchen after Ethan had fallen asleep. "He was so happy about the pregnancy, but in the last few weeks he seemed worried." "Worried about what?" "I'm not sure. He kept asking strange questions about insurance, documents, things like that. He even asked if I knew any lawyers." Jennifer felt a chill. Michael had apparently been asking people about legal matters. "Did he say why he wanted a lawyer?" "He said he needed to organize some important papers, but he didn't go into details." "Were you two having problems?" "No, nothing like that. We were so happy waiting for Ethan." Sarah grew thoughtful for a moment. "You know, there's one thing that always puzzled me. The week before he got sick, Michael asked me to hold on to a key for him." Jennifer's heart raced. "What kind of key?" "A small one, like for a padlock. He said it was important, and that if anything happened to him, I should give it to you." Sarah went to her room and returned with a small golden key. "Did he say where this key was used?" "No, but I remember he always went to the bank during lunch. Maybe it's for a safe." Jennifer held the key as if it were treasure. The next day, she went to the bank where Michael kept his account. The manager, a middle-aged man named Mr. Anderson, was polite but cautious. "To access a safe deposit box, I need documents proving your legal right," he explained, examining the key. "This does look like one of ours, but without a marriage certificate or will." Jennifer felt that familiar frustration again. Everything that could help her was blocked by the same documents Barbara had hidden. "Is there any way to know if my husband left specific instructions? I can check if there are any notes on his account, but it'll take some time." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now back to the story. While waiting for the bank's response, Jennifer kept looking for work. Through Mrs. Johnson, she found some extra jobs as a house cleaner in the area. It was hard work, especially carrying Ethan around, but it was honest money. One of the homes she cleaned belonged to attorney Margaret, a retired 62-year-old lawyer who was impressed by Jennifer's dedication. With neatly styled grey hair, elegant glasses, and an upright posture, she carried the authority of someone who'd spent decades in court. "That mother-in-law of yours is taking advantage of the situation," attorney Margaret said after hearing Jennifer's story. "Let me look into this for you." The attorney made a few calls and discovered that the lawsuit filed by Barbara had several irregularities. "She can't just claim you're unfit without concrete evidence. And the fact that she emptied the joint account can be legally challenged. but I don't have money to hire a lawyer. Sweetheart, I'm retired, but I still have my active license. I'll represent you for free." For the first time in weeks, Jennifer felt a spark of hope. Attorney Margaret immediately got to work on the case, filing a petition for Barbara to present the documents she had confiscated and another to challenge the bank account withdrawal. But Barbara wasn't willing to cooperate easily. She hired her own lawyer and began claiming that Jennifer had voluntarily abandoned the home, taking items that didn't belong to her. "She's saying you ran off with jewelry and money," explained Attorney Margaret, reviewing Barbara's response. "Obviously these are lies, but we'll need to prove it." The legal proceedings dragged on, and Jennifer felt the financial pressure mounting. Ethan was growing and needed more diapers, more milk, bigger clothes. The odd job she managed to find barely covered the basics. One afternoon, Jennifer was returning from work when she found Mrs. Wilson, now recovered from pneumonia, waiting for her at Sarah's house. "My dear, I have news for you," the older woman said with a mysterious smile. "Remember the building's cleaner, Mrs. Ruth?" Jennifer vaguely recalled a woman who cleaned the common areas of the building where Barbara lived. "She found a box in the building's trash a few days after you were kicked out. She thought it was strange and kept it, thinking someone might have thrown it away by mistake." Mrs. Wilson opened a plastic bag and pulled out a dusty shoebox. Inside were photos of Jennifer and Michael's wedding, some personal documents, romantic cards they had exchanged while dating, and at the bottom a sealed envelope with Jennifer's name written in Michael's handwriting. Jennifer took the envelope with trembling hands. It was thick, as if it contained several pages. Carefully she opened it and found a handwritten letter in Michael's neat script. "My dearest Jennifer, if you're reading this letter, it means something happened to me, and I couldn't tell you in person what I wanted to say. I hope you never have to read these words, but if you do, I want you to know how much you and our son mean to me." Jennifer had to stop reading for a moment. Tears blurred her vision, and her chest tightened with emotion. "In recent weeks, I've noticed some strange things in my body. Chest pains, extreme fatigue. I went to the doctor and he said it might be stress, but something inside me tells me it's more serious. I didn't want to scare you during the pregnancy, so I decided to prepare for any eventuality. Jennifer, I know my mother better than anyone. I know she never fully accepted you, and I'm afraid that if something happens to me, she'll try to take away what's rightfully yours. That's why I've taken some precautions." Jennifer kept reading, her heart racing. Michael had opened a safe deposit box at the bank and stored important documents there. He had also taken out a life insurance policy months earlier when he learned about the pregnancy. "Attorney William Porter is already paid to help you with any legal matters. His office is at 1247 Broadway, Suite 302. The key to the safe is with our friend Sarah. I asked her to keep it because I knew you could count on her if I was no longer here." Jennifer looked at Sarah, who sat beside her, also in tears. "You knew about all this?" "No, I swear I didn't. Michael only asked me to keep the key and give it to you if something happened. I had no idea it was part of a bigger plan." The letter continued with more practical details, but also words of love and encouragement. "I know it will be difficult, my love, but you are the strongest woman I know. Raise our son with the love I know you have in your heart. Don't let the bitterness of my mother poison your life. If she tries to harm you, use everything I've prepared to defend yourself. In the safe, besides the documents, there's a savings account in your name that I opened last month. I deposited everything I could save. It's not much, but it should be enough for you to get settled. There's also a copy of our will. Yes, we made a will without you knowing. The attorney helped me make it all legal. Jennifer, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to find love again, if that's what happens. Don't cling to grief forever. I want our son to grow up seeing his mother smile, not just cry over my absence. I love you more than words can express. Forever yours, Michael." Jennifer finished reading, completely overwhelmed with emotion. Michael had thought of everything, had prepared to protect her even after he was gone. It was as if he were still there, watching over her and Ethan. The next day, Jennifer went to the office of the attorney mentioned in the letter. Attorney William Porter was a man in his early 40s, with graying temples, prescription glasses, and a warm smile. His office was small but tidy, with shelves full of law books and a few plants that gave the space a cozy feel. "Jennifer, I've been expecting you," he said, standing to greet her. "Michael told me so much about you and said I should be ready to help you. He really foresaw all this? He was very worried about his mother's reaction if anything happened. He knew Mrs. Barbara's temperament well and wanted to make sure you and the baby were protected." Attorney Porter showed Jennifer all the documents Michael had prepared. There was a certified copy of their marriage certificate, the will leaving everything to Jennifer and their unborn child, and the life insurance papers. "The insurance is substantial," the attorney explained. Michael insisted on paying a full year in advance to avoid any bureaucratic issues. Jennifer felt a mix of gratitude and sorrow. Michael had taken care of everything, but she would have rather had him there with her and Ethan. With the documents in hand, they could finally access the safe at the bank. Besides the savings account Michael had mentioned, there was another surprise: the papers for a small house he had put a down payment on months earlier. "He told me it was meant to be a surprise for when the baby was born," Attorney Porter explained. "The house is in Montclair, small but in a good neighborhood. Michael paid the down payment and covered 2 years of installments with the life insurance." Jennifer couldn't hold back her tears. Michael had planned an entire future for them, down to the smallest details. The case against Barbara took a completely different turn with the new evidence. Attorney Margaret worked alongside Attorney Porter to prove that her mother-in-law had acted in bad faith by hiding the documents and emptying the bank account. Now she'll have to explain to the judge why she confiscated documents that didn't belong to her, Attorney Margaret said with satisfaction. Barbara tried to argue that she didn't know about the documents, but her own actions contradicted her. She had clearly gone through all of Michael's belongings before throwing things away. The final hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Jennifer arrived at the courthouse carrying Ethan, now 4 months old, in a baby carrier Mrs. Johnson had bought for her. The baby was chubbier now, with round cheeks and an easy smile that won over everyone. Barbara was there with her attorney, a man in a dark suit trying to appear more intimidating than he really was. She avoided looking directly at Jennifer and her grandson throughout the entire hearing. The judge, a middle-aged man named Judge Richard, listened carefully to both sides. When Attorney William Porter presented all the evidence of Michael's planning, including the letter and the safe documents, the case became clear. "It's evident that Mr. Michael Miller took specific measures to protect his wife and son," said the judge. "The actions of the petitioner, Barbara Miller, in confiscating documents and draining bank accounts without legal authorization, constitute embezzlement and obstruction of the widow's rights." Barbara was ordered to return the money she had withdrawn from the account, pay a fine and cover the legal fees. Additionally, the judge ruled that she could not approach Jennifer or attempt to interfere with Ethan's upbringing without court approval. Leaving the courthouse, Jennifer finally felt free. Sarah, who had attended the hearing as a witness, gave her a big hug. "Michael would be so proud," Sarah said, gently stroking Ethan's head. "He always said you were strong, but I don't think even he realized just how much." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, back to the story. The house in Montclair was small but perfect for Jennifer and Ethan. It had 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a small backyard where she could plant some herbs. Michael had chosen it carefully. It was close to a good school, a health clinic, and a bus line that went straight to downtown New York City. When Jennifer entered the house for the first time, she found another surprise. Michael had secretly prepared the baby's room. There was a light wood crib, a small dresser, simple wall decorations with forest animal designs, and a nursing chair placed near the window. "Daddy thought of everything, didn't he, Ethan?" Jennifer murmured, holding the baby and looking around the room prepared with so much love. Jennifer used part of the insurance money to buy basic furniture for the rest of the house and set aside a reserve for emergencies. With the remainder, she decided to start a small business. During her months of hardship, she had noticed how difficult it was for other vulnerable mothers to find support and guidance. She turned her living room into a counseling space where she offered free advice to mothers in situations similar to what she had faced. She helped with bureaucratic issues, referred them to lawyers and psychologists, and created a support network where women could share experiences and help each other. My own experience taught me how important it is to have someone to guide you, Jennifer explained to the women who came to her. When you're alone and desperate, you can't think clearly. Mrs. Wilson, now fully recovered, became an active volunteer in Jennifer's project. Her life experience and wisdom were invaluable to the younger women seeking help. "My dear, you've turned your pain into purpose," the older woman said, watching Jennifer assist a young mother who had been kicked out by her parents after becoming pregnant. Sarah also got involved in the project, helping with administrative tasks and using her professional experience to organize activities. Her daughter Madison, now 16, looked after the younger children while the mothers attended meetings. Attorney Margaret began offering free legal consultations once a week at Jennifer's home. Mrs. Johnson contributed by baking cakes and snacks for the meetings, saying she had finally found a useful way to use her cooking skills. "You've created a chosen family," Attorney Margaret observed during one of these gatherings. "It's beautiful to see how women can support each other." 6 months after the final hearing, Jennifer received an unexpected call. It was Barbara. "Jennifer, could you come over? I need to talk to you." Her mother-in-law's voice sounded different, weaker, less hostile. Jennifer hesitated but decided to go. She left Ethan with Mrs. Wilson and went to the apartment where it had all begun. Barbara looked noticeably thinner and tired. Her hair, once always neatly styled, was disheveled, and she wore an old robe over her dress. "Please sit down," Barbara asked, pointing to the living room sofa. The apartment was messy, with piles of letters on the table and a few cardboard boxes on the floor. "Jennifer, I need to ask for your forgiveness." The words came out softly, almost a whisper. Jennifer was surprised. She never imagined she'd hear Barbara apologize. "After everything that happened in court, I was left alone here and started thinking a lot. I remembered conversations I had with Michael before he passed." Barbara stood up and went to one of the boxes, pulling out a yellowed envelope. "Michael wrote me a letter too. I only found it last week. It was mixed in with some old papers." Jennifer took the letter curiously. It was shorter than the one Michael had written to her, but just as touching. "Mom, I know you never fully approved of my choice to marry Jennifer, but I hope you understand she makes me happy. If anything happens to me, please take care of her as you would me. She is my family now, and the baby she carries is your grandchild. Don't let the bitterness of your marriage ruin their happiness. Jennifer is a good person, a good wife, and will be a great mother. Give her a chance to show you the love you have for me. Share some of it with them. That's all I ask. Your loving son, Michael." Barbara was crying by the time Jennifer finished reading. "I was so full of anger, so bitter about losing my only son, that I took it all out on you," she said between sobs. "I thought pushing you away would make the pain less, but it only made everything worse." Jennifer felt a mix of compassion and caution. Her mother-in-law's pain was real, but the consequences of her actions had been devastating. "Michael always spoke fondly of you despite your differences," Jennifer said. "He wanted us to be a family. I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to meet my grandson. I promise I won't interfere in your life or how you raise him. I just wanted a small part of Michael back." Jennifer thought of Ethan, growing up curious and smiling. He deserved to know all his family, including his paternal grandmother, but clear boundaries would have to be set. "I can bring Ethan to visit you sometimes," Jennifer finally said, "but it has to be on my terms, and any attempt to cause trouble will end the visits." Barbara agreed immediately, with a mix of gratitude and humility Jennifer had never seen in her before. The first visits were tense, but gradually Barbara learned to respect the boundaries Jennifer set. She found in her grandson a source of joy she had lost with her son's passing. Ethan, in turn, seemed to enjoy the extra attention and the affectionate way his grandmother treated him. "He has Michael's eyes, but his smile is yours," Barbara said during one visit, holding Ethan as he played with a rattle. "Michael used to say that too," Jennifer replied, watching the interaction between grandmother and grandson. Jennifer arranged for visits to happen once a week, always with Mrs. Wilson or Sarah present, at least at first. Barbara accepted all the conditions without complaint, showing a genuine change in her attitude. The support project for vulnerable mothers grew beyond Jennifer's expectations. What began as informal gatherings in her living room turned into a structured program serving dozens of women each month. She secured partnerships with the local health clinic, some attorneys in the area, and even a daycare that offered priority spots for mothers in the program. "You've created something very important here," Attorney Margaret said during a monthly meeting. "This kind of support should exist in every neighborhood." Jennifer had found her calling. Turning her painful experience into something useful for other women gave new meaning to her life. She understood the hopelessness those mothers felt because she had been in their shoes. One of the women who benefited most from the program was Ashley, a 22-year-old who had been kicked out by her parents when she got pregnant. She joined the support group in her 5th month, sleeping on the streets and eating only when she could scrape together a few dollars cleaning windshields at traffic lights. "I thought about giving up on everything," Ashley confessed during one meeting. "I couldn't see a way out." Jennifer helped Ashley secure temporary shelter, medical guidance, and supported her through childbirth. When Ashley's daughter was born, Jennifer was there at the hospital, offering the same kind of support she wished she'd had when Ethan was born. "You saved me," Ashley said, holding her newborn. "I don't know where I'd be if I hadn't found your group." Stories like Ashley's happened often, and Jennifer felt she was honoring Michael's memory in the best way possible. He had always been generous, willing to help anyone in need, and she was carrying on that legacy. Ethan grew up healthy and happy, surrounded by a support network of women who had become his extended family. Mrs. Wilson was like a loving great-grandmother, Sarah was the fun aunt who always had a joke ready, and Mrs. Johnson was the adoptive grandma who made the best cakes in town. "Aunt Jennifer, when I grow up, I want to help moms too," Madison, Sarah's daughter, said while playing with Ethan in the backyard. "You're already helping, sweetheart," Jennifer replied, watching the teenager patiently play with the 1-year-old. One Saturday afternoon, as Jennifer was organizing some papers at home, she came across Michael's letter again. She had read it dozens of times, but his words still brought her comfort. One line in particular always moved her. "Jennifer, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to find love again if that's what you want." She had avoided thinking about it in the first months after Michael's passing. The grief was too overwhelming, and she had focused solely on surviving and raising Ethan. But now, with life more stable, she sometimes caught herself wondering what it would be like to have someone to share the challenges and joys of motherhood. During one of the support group meetings, she met David, a volunteer psychologist who began offering free counseling to participants. He was 32, with perpetually messy brown hair, dark-framed glasses, and a kind smile that inspired trust. David had lost his wife in a car accident 2 years earlier and understood the complexity of grief and rebuilding life. His approach with the women in the group was respectful and effective, and he quickly became an essential part of the program. "You do incredible work here," David told Jennifer after a particularly difficult session where one participant had shared her experience with domestic violence. "It's the least I can do," Jennifer replied. "When I went through my situation, I would have given anything for a group like this." The two began talking more frequently, initially just about the group's work, but gradually about their own experiences of loss and resilience. David admired Jennifer's strength and determination, while she appreciated his ability to listen without judgment and his dedication to helping others. "Sometimes I feel guilty for starting to feel okay," Jennifer confessed during one of their conversations, "as if being happy is a betrayal of Michael's memory." "Grief isn't linear," David explained gently. "And allowing yourself to be happy again doesn't mean you loved your husband any less. It means you're honoring the love he had for you by living fully, just as he would have wanted." Ethan, who was now crawling and exploring everything within reach, seemed to like David. The psychologist had endless patience with children and often played with the boy during the meetings. "How you can tell he's going to be a curious little one," David remarked, watching Ethan try to open every kitchen cabinet during one gathering. "Just like his father, from what you've told me." Jennifer smiled. Michael had indeed been a curious person, always asking questions and wanting to understand how things worked. The relationship between Jennifer and David developed slowly, with deep respect for each other's grieving process. They got to know each other better during the walks they started taking together in the park near Jennifer's house, always carrying Ethan in a baby carrier. "I don't know if I'm ready for a relationship," Jennifer said during one of these walks, 6 months after meeting David. "There's no rush," he replied, pushing the stroller where Ethan slept, lulled by the motion. "What matters is that we can be honest about how we feel." Jennifer appreciated that honesty. David never pressured her or tried to rush decisions. He understood she needed time to process the idea of loving again without feeling disloyal to Michael's memory. During the year-end holidays, Jennifer hosted a gathering for all the women in the support group and their children. The small house was filled with laughter, shared stories, and kids running around the backyard. Barbara was also invited and brought a special gift for Ethan, a photo album with pictures of Michael from childhood until just before his passing. "I want my grandson to know his father's story," she said, flipping through the pages with Jennifer. "Michael was such a happy child, always smiling, just like Ethan." Jennifer was moved by the photos. Michael as a boy in the park, as a teenager at his first job, as a grown man smiling beside his mother. It was a way to keep his memory alive for Ethan. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. It'll mean so much for Ethan to have these memories of his father." Her mother-in-law had completely changed her attitude. She was still reserved, but no longer showed hostility. Sometimes she even offered practical help, like watching Ethan when Jennifer needed to handle project matters. During the gathering, David helped serve dinner and played with the children, fitting in naturally with the group. Several of the women quietly remarked to Jennifer about how genuinely caring he seemed toward everyone there. "He's a good man," Mrs. Thompson said to Jennifer as they watched David teach Ethan how to stack toy blocks. "And it's obvious he cares deeply for you and the boy." Jennifer knew Mrs. Thompson was right. David had become a steady, positive presence in their lives. He was there during the hard moments, celebrated both small and big victories, and treated Ethan with the affection of someone who truly cared. One evening, after one of the group meetings, David stayed behind to help Jennifer tidy up. Ethan was already asleep, and the house was quiet. They spoke softly as they put away the chairs and cleaned the coffee cups. "Jennifer, I need to tell you something," said David, suddenly stopping in the middle of the room. She looked at him, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "I've fallen in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Jennifer felt her heart race, a mix of joy and fear washing over her. "David, I know it's complicated. I know you're still processing so much, but I can't pretend I don't feel what I feel." Jennifer stepped closer to him, placing her hand on his face. "I've fallen for you too," she whispered, "but I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Of betraying Michael's memory, of not being fair to you, bringing all this baggage, of Ethan not accepting another man in his life." David held her hands gently. "Love isn't betrayal, Jennifer, and I don't want to replace Michael in your lives. I want to build something new, respecting everything that came before." They kissed for the first time right there in the living room, surrounded by traces of the stories of resilience Jennifer helped build every week. It was a tender kiss, full of promises and hope. In the following months, Jennifer and David's relationship grew naturally. They didn't move in together right away, preferring to learn more about each other's dynamics before making bigger decisions. David continued living in his downtown apartment, but spent weekends at Jennifer's house. Ethan, now a year and a half old, had completely accepted David. He called him Dado and would run to hug him whenever he saw him arrive. David never tried to take the place of Ethan's biological father, but became a loving and present father figure. "Dado, pue," Ethan would say, pulling David by the hand toward the toys scattered across the backyard. David had set up a small garden in the yard, teaching Ethan about plants and responsibility. The boy loved watering the little seedlings with his small watering can, even if he ended up soaking himself more than the plants. Jennifer watched these interactions with a heart full of gratitude. Michael had wanted her to be happy, and she had finally found a way to be. The support project for vulnerable mothers continued to grow. Jennifer secured a small grant from the local government to formalize the activities and hire David as the program's official psychologist. They began handling more complex cases, including women suffering from domestic violence and at-risk pregnant teenagers. "You two saved my life," said Taylor, one of the group's longest-standing members during a meeting. "When I first came here, I was ready to give up on everything. Now I have a job, my daughter is healthy, and I found strength I didn't know I had." Stories like Taylor's multiplied, confirming for Jennifer that she had found her life's purpose. Every woman who rebuilt her life was a victory shared by the whole group. Mrs. Johnson, who had become like a second mother to Jennifer, offered her home as an extension of the project on days when demand was high. "My apartment was too quiet anyway," she said, preparing sandwiches for a group of teen mothers. "Now at least I have company and feel useful." Attorney Margaret also expanded her involvement, creating workshops on women's rights and basic legal matters. She taught participants how to understand contracts, labor rights, and how to legally protect themselves in difficult situations. "Knowledge is power," she always repeated during the workshops. "The more you know about your rights, the less vulnerable you'll be." On a special afternoon, exactly 2 years after being thrown out by Barbara, Jennifer organized a different kind of celebration. She invited everyone who had been part of her journey of overcoming to a lunch at her home. Mrs. Wilson arrived early, bringing her famous cornbread cake. Sarah and Madison came with a colorful salad. Mrs. Johnson brought her special Brigadeiro truffles. Attorney Margaret showed up with flowers from her garden. David arrived with Ethan on his shoulders, back from a walk in the park. And to many people's surprise, Barbara also appeared, carrying a framed photo of Michael holding Ethan. "It's a composite I had made," she explained, showing the image where Michael seemed to be holding the son he never got to meet in person. "I wanted Ethan to have a photo with his father." Jennifer was moved. It was a gesture of genuine kindness, so different from the hostile Barbara she had once known. During lunch, stories intertwined. Each person shared how they had come into Jennifer's life and how that experience had changed their own lives too. "When I first started helping you, I thought I was just doing charity," Mrs. Johnson confessed. "But I realized you gave me far more than I ever gave you. I feel like part of a family again." "Working with you helped me deal with my own loss," David said, looking at Jennifer fondly. "I found purpose and love at the same time." "I learned it's never too late to change," Barbara said quietly. "That hatred only hurts the one who feels it, and that forgiveness can heal very old wounds." Jennifer looked around the table, seeing all the people who had become her chosen family. Ethan was sitting on Mrs. Wilson's lap, laughing as she made funny faces at him. The little boy had no idea of the difficult journey his mother had faced to build this life full of love and support. "Michael would be so proud of all this," Sarah said, noticing the emotion in Jennifer's eyes. "He always believed you were capable of amazing things." After lunch, David and Jennifer walked together through the small backyard, watching Ethan play with the other aunts and grandmothers he had gained along the way. "Sometimes I think about how life can change completely in such a short time," Jennifer said, holding David's hand. 2 years ago, I was desperate, with nowhere to go. Today, I have a home full of love, a job that gives me purpose, and a family I chose. And you have plans for the future," David added with a mysterious smile. Jennifer looked at him curiously. "What kind of plans?" David knelt right there in the yard, pulling a small box from his pocket. It wasn't an expensive or extravagant ring, but it held special meaning. "Jennifer, I don't want to replace what you had with Michael. I want to build something new, ours, while respecting everything that came before. Will you marry me?" Jennifer looked at the ring, then at David, then at Ethan playing happily, and finally at all the loved ones gathered in her home. Her heart overflowed with gratitude and love. "Yes," she answered with tears of joy in her eyes, "I want to build this new life with you." The backyard erupted in celebration when David announced the engagement. Ethan, not fully understanding what was happening, started clapping along with the adults. Barbara cried with emotion, happy to see that her daughter-in-law had found the happiness Michael had wished for her. "It'll be a simple wedding," Jennifer told the women gathered around her. "But I want all of you there. You're my family." Wedding preparations became a group effort. Mrs. Johnson took charge of the cake. Attorney Margaret offered her garden as the ceremony location. Sarah organized the decorations with Madison's help. Mrs. Wilson was responsible for watching Ethan during the ceremony. Barbara surprised everyone by offering the wedding dress she had worn decades ago at her own wedding. "It's been stored away for a long time," she said, showing the simple yet elegant dress. "It would be an honor if you wanted to wear it." Jennifer was moved by the gesture. It was yet another sign of how Barbara had genuinely changed. The wedding took place on a sunny Saturday afternoon in Attorney Margaret's garden. There were no more than 20 people present, but each one represented an important part of Jennifer's journey. The women from the support group were there with their children, turning the ceremony into a celebration of an extended family. David was emotional at the makeshift altar under a flowering tree. Jennifer entered accompanied by Ethan, who carried the rings on a small cushion. The nearly 2-year-old boy took his role very seriously, walking slowly and carefully toward David. "Pedo Mary," Ethan said, handing over the rings with a proud smile. The ceremony was officiated by a justice of the peace who was a friend of Attorney Margaret. The vows were simple but profound. "David, you came into my life when I needed most to learn that it was possible to love again without forgetting who I had loved before," Jennifer said. "Thank you for respecting my past and wanting to build a future with me and with Ethan. Jennifer, you taught me that strength comes from love, not from suffering. I promise to take care of you and Ethan, to honor Michael's memory, and to build a family with you based on respect and companionship," David replied. When they kissed as husband and wife, Ethan started clapping again, making everyone laugh. The reception that followed was simple but full of joy. The children ran around the garden while the adults shared stories and laughter. Barbara approached Jennifer during the celebration. "Thank you for allowing me to be part of my grandson's life," she said, "and congratulations. Michael would be so happy to see you like this." Jennifer hugged her mother-in-law, sealing their peace for good. 6 months after the wedding, Jennifer and David received news that filled them with joy. They were expecting a baby. Ethan, now 2.5, was curious about his mother's growing belly. "Baby there?" he asked, pointing at Jennifer's stomach. "Yes, your little brother is growing in here," David patiently explained. The support project for vulnerable mothers continued to grow. Jennifer and David managed to rent their own space, a larger house that allowed them to help more women and offer more services. They created job training workshops, partnerships with local businesses for employment opportunities, and even a small clothing and baby supplies bank. "You've built a true support center," the local councilman said during an official visit. "This project should be a model for other cities." Jennifer was proud of what they had accomplished, but she knew the most important thing was the lives they had changed. Every woman who escaped hardship and built a dignified life for herself and her children was a victory that echoed far beyond statistics. Ashley, the young woman Jennifer had helped at the start of the project, now worked as an administrative assistant at the center. Her 3-year-old daughter played in the kids area while her mother worked. "You showed me it was possible to start over," Ashley told Jennifer during a meeting. "Now I want to do the same for other women." Taylor had completed her nursing certification and worked at the local hospital. Several other women from the group had found jobs, finished their education, or started small businesses. "Your success is what drives me every day," Jennifer said during their monthly meetings. "Every one of your victories proves that it's possible to overcome even the hardest situations." When Jennifer was 7 months into her second pregnancy, she received a phone call that left her deeply emotional. It was the mayor of the neighboring town, asking for help to implement a similar project in her area. "We've heard about your work and would like to replicate the model here," the mayor explained. "We have many women in vulnerable situations, and we believe this approach could help." Jennifer and David decided to take on the challenge of expanding the project. They created an implementation manual and began training teams from other cities. What had started as Jennifer's personal need was becoming a regional movement. Emma, Jennifer and David's daughter, was born on a clear spring morning. Ethan, now 3 years old, was fascinated by his little sister. "My Emma," he would say, gently stroking the baby's face. Jennifer looked at her 2 children with a heart overflowing with love. Emma was a calm baby, with blue eyes like David's, while Ethan had his biological father's brown eyes. They were different, but equally loved. Michael would be happy knowing Ethan has a family like this, Barbara remarked during a visit to the hospital. He always wanted you to be happy. Her mother-in-law had become a present and affectionate grandmother to Ethan and promised to be just as loving toward Emma. Her personal transformation continued to surprise Jennifer. For Emma's first birthday, Jennifer organized a party that once again brought together her entire chosen family. The backyard had been expanded to accommodate the project meetings and now comfortably held the group of loved ones who gathered regularly. Mrs. Wilson, now 72, remained active and involved. Sarah had been promoted at work, and Madison was graduating high school with plans to study psychology, inspired by David's work. Mrs. Wee Johnson had moved to an apartment closer to Jennifer's home to help more with the children. Attorney Margaret, retired for 2 years, devoted most of her time to the volunteer project. "You've turned my retirement into something far more meaningful than I ever imagined," she said during the party. "I feel useful and loved every day." David was radiant, holding Emma in his arms while Ethan clung to his leg. He had adapted perfectly to fatherhood, treating both children with equal dedication and love. "Sometimes I can't believe this is my life," Jennifer confessed to Sarah as they watched the celebration. 5 years ago, I didn't even know if I'd survive the next day. Now I have a beautiful family, work I love, and an incredible support network." "You deserve all this and more," Sarah replied. "Michael chose well when he fell in love with you. And you chose well when you decided to fight instead of giving up." Jennifer took out Michael's letter, which she kept in a special box along with other important mementos. Even after all these years, his words still moved and guided her. "Jennifer, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to find love again if that's what happens. Don't hold on to grief forever. I want our son to grow up seeing his mother smile, not just cry over my absence." She had managed to honor all of Michael's wishes. Ethan was growing up happy and loved, surrounded by people who cared for him. She had found love again without forgetting her first love, and she had turned her pain into purpose, helping other women find the strength to start over. "Thank you, Michael," she whispered, looking up at the sky, "for everything you did to protect us, and for giving me permission to be happy again." The party lasted late into the night, with the children falling asleep in the adults' arms and conversations growing more intimate and heartfelt. It was exactly the kind of celebration Michael would have loved, simple, full of genuine love, and centered on the people who truly mattered. When everyone had left and the house finally fell silent, Jennifer and David sat in the backyard, each holding one of their sleeping children. "Thinking about what lies ahead?" asked David, noticing Jennifer's thoughtful gaze. "Thinking about how surprising life can be," she replied. "I never imagined I could build something like this out of so much pain." "You didn't build it from the pain," David gently corrected. "You built it despite the pain. The difference matters." Jennifer smiled. David always knew the right words for even the most complicated situations. "And now? What do we do with everything we've built?" "We keep growing," said David. "The project can expand to other cities. Ethan and Emma will grow up seeing how it's possible to help others, and we'll grow old together, surrounded by this crazy family we've made." "Sounds like a good plan," Jennifer agreed, squeezing David's hand. They walked inside slowly, tucked the children into their beds, and prepared for another peaceful night of sleep. Jennifer took one last look into Ethan's room, where the photo album of Michael rested on the shelf. The boy knew the story of his biological father and had learned to cherish his memory, but he'd also found in David a loving and present father figure. In Emma's room, the cloud-patterned curtains filtered the soft moonlight. The baby slept soundly, secure in the knowledge that she was surrounded by unconditional love. Jennifer lay down beside David, thinking about everything that had happened since that cold morning when Barbara had thrown her out. Every hardship had turned into a lesson. Every person who crossed her path had brought something important, and every difficult choice had led her to where she was now. "Good night, my love," David whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Good night," Jennifer replied, closing her eyes with a peaceful heart. Outside, New York City carried on with its bustling nightlife, but inside the small house in Montclair, a family slept soundly, protected by the love built with patience, courage, and hope. Jennifer's story had begun with despair and rejection, but had transformed into one of resilience, love, and purpose. She had proven that it's possible to start over, even in the toughest circumstances. That family isn't just who you're born with, and that true love can come more than once in a lifetime. And somewhere, perhaps Michael knew his careful plans had worked, that Jennifer had found the happiness he'd always wanted for her, and that Ethan would grow up surrounded by the love Michael had tried to secure in his final letter. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of Jennifer's story and where you're watching from. Do you believe she made the right choices in forgiving Barbara and allowing herself to love again? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like the video and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartfelt stories like this one.